Hi, Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com's DevOps TV here at Does 2016, and we're here with Dan Gahafer and Jeff Payne, right?
That's it.
Okay, Dan and Jeff presented today on an interesting topic that I don't think we've covered before, and that is DevOps at the DoD, right? And the DoD, as we were talking, gentlemen, offline, is something, you know, in my prior life, I had a lot of experience working with various agencies and parts of the DoD. And I don't know if our audience at home, if you've never sold to the federal government, number one, but number two, to the DoD in general, you've never really, you don't understand the true size and scale of the DoD and or of the federal government as an IT customer. But guys, why don't you give our audience a little bit of not a preview because you already spoke, but a little bit of an idea of what your presentation was about.
I'll start it out, Jeff, if you don't mind. So back in the time frame we're talking about, from about 2009 until 2015, I was the forge.mil program manager as a government employee for DISA. And my boss, the CTO for DISA, wanted to drive some innovation into software development for the DoD, and so created the forge.mil brand, if you will, as an ALM offering for the entire department. The idea was to facilitate information sharing, code sharing, and ultimately it ended up being what it is today is the enterprise ALM for the Department of Defense. And we intended from the onset to make it a software development project unlike any others before in the Department of Defense. And I think with that, I'm going to let Jeff take over to talk about what that means and where we went with it.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so it was very interesting. When we got involved, as Dan mentioned, we were part of the engineering team that came in about a year into the project. There was a team in place that hadn't really delivered on the Agile promise, and DISA really wanted to make this an exemplar Agile program, right? If we were going to deliver Agile services to all of DoD, it only makes sense that the program itself be Agile. And so we came in and we were part of the development team focused on building the applications and deploying them out, and ran into some huge challenges. As you know, I mean, all these large organizations are very stovepiped. Every function from dev to test to ops to security were all owned by various pieces of the organization, different contractors with different contracts. And so we really only controlled initially the development piece of it. But over time, what we were able to do, working with these other organizations, is start to automate more and more and more of the process. We got continuous integration in place. Then we took over and started automating the testing aspects that the testing organization was doing, and we started giving them automation to run so that it wasn't so manual, and ultimately used Puppet to automate the deployments and all the environmental setup. Wow. And we're able to, over a 4 or 5 year period, reduce deployments from being 6 months to 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. You know, it's really impressive. You're talking about 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, there wasn't a lot of DevOps 4 or 5 years ago. So it's incredible to think about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you thought about this. DoD and DISA, you're right, implementing DevOps, when most of the companies who are presenting here probably, it wasn't an inkling in their eye. It wasn't a sparkle in their eye. So, you know, when we think of, we don't often think of the government especially, right, leading the charge on these things, but here's, you guys are the proof. You're the smoking gun of it. And what's the state of the program today?
Dan?
So today it's still, and I briefed this, you know, there's still approximately, I think last count, 900 projects, 30,000 users of the free version of forge.mil. So there's two versions. There's a free ALM, and then there's a fee-for-service ALM, which the free version, everyone has access to read any artifacts in your program. In the fee-for-service, you can implement access controls. So you can keep, if you have some intellectual property you want to protect, you can implement controls over that, so only team members or only certain team members can get access. And so totally, we have about 5,000 users in that one, 30,000 in the other. So 35,000 users total, and we estimated back when the program began that we would have up to 100,000 users that we
So
could
it's built to
eventually
scale.
reach. So yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
That's excellent. And so it was originally, it was funded by DISA and kind of the brainchild of DISA, but you're with Coveros, and you're with HPE now, Dan, right?
I am.
And what's HPE's role now with this?
We have no role in forge.mil. HPE did bid as a subcontractor on the engineering effort that was awarded 2 years ago, but ICS is doing, as the company that won that as the
Right.
prime, ICS is doing all the engineering, and HPE has a smaller role, mostly facilitating some of the agile development and also working for the program office to manage some of the business functions, because I mentioned we have this fee-for-service offering, the forge.mil team does,
Right.
and there's a lot of business functions that have to be worked for that are pretty
Sure.
manual.
Yep. It's interesting. We've had the chance to interview a few people today. Terry from Raytheon. I don't think I actually interviewed, but I spoke with a lady from Northrop Grumman,
Suzanne.
and it's good to see that the Fed space is really not only not playing catch up here, but actually helping lead the charge with this whole DevOps kind of use pattern and experience. So, and like I always felt the feds were a little behind in the cloud adoption, right? Because they had such security concerns around it initially. But with DevOps, I mean, they've taken it to heart, and I think it's a good thing. Interestingly, I was out at the I've been to London a few times, but DevOps Enterprise London, as well as our own CD Summit, and I see the same thing actually with government in UK. Very, very DevOps friendly, if you will. So that's kind of goes against, I think, the mindset a lot of people think of the government as plotting and behind. So that's great. Guys, this is a great thing. Dan, I know you've got years invested into this now, and it sounds like one of the kinds of things that we see in government that succeed, when all too often we hear about things in government that don't succeed. So it's always good to hear that. It's election day tomorrow, right?
Right.
We do some things right, and we're still a great country. All right, Dan, Jeff, thank you for joining us on DevOps
Thank
TV.
you. Right.
And enjoy the rest of the DevOps Enterprise Summit. Okay?
Thanks.
Great.
This
Thank
is
you.
Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com's DevOps TV.